Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of video game news with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel as the background game. Today is Monday, February 14th, Valentine's Day, so as far as video games are related, that doesn't really affect too much. There are a couple of video game companies certainly that will make like Valentine's Day cards and put them on Twitter and things like that, but we don't really have daily rewards in most games for Valentine's Day. If anything, there is probably, if any push, a slight push to get people to not play video games on Valentine's Days and instead focus on having romantic outings. Whether or not the average gamer has romantic outings or not is always going to be a question. You could fall into a stereotype and say, no, all gamers are sad losers, but then in reality, 80% of, I think, people in first world countries like the United States have probably played games, so the answer there is probably yes, as much as anybody else. There is on top of that, with the whole pandemic still looming around and being an issue, there's probably less one can do as far as the traditional capitalist consumerist idea of Valentine's Day, because the idea of like cooking something at home special for somebody is not often even considered. It's always take them out to a fancy restaurant or buy them an expensive gift. Flowers, for instance, being a big one, with flowers being something that is a highly disposable and unnecessary product to exist for sale, like, at all. For every field that flowers are grown in and all the trucks that ship flowers from point A to point B, and all the CO2 that gets put in the air for shipping, and just all the other knock-on effects of growing flowers in commercial farms. Something better could have been done with those resources. We could have been growing actual food for people who need food, or just letting the land grow trees to clear out the CO2 in the air that we dump in the air. Diamonds, it's kind of the same thing. You have these rocks that, while a diamond is pretty good for making a record stylus, it barely has any other use at all. Like, it is a very, very useless mineral. Maybe in some piece of technology that I'm not aware of, diamonds are still necessary, but otherwise it's pretty useless. Compare that to gold. Gold is actually very good for electronics, but is wasted on jewelry, certainly, particularly when you realize that things having gold plating around them, as most jewelry does, is actually just an incredibly small amount of gold, masquerading as if the entire ring is solid gold, which it couldn't possibly be solid gold, or it would melt in your hand like butter. Other sapphires, rubies, things like that. I think rubies are actually sapphires technically. All may have some slight value to them in actual practical use, but I couldn't tell you for any use for any of them. Maybe you need a sapphire or a ruby to make a high-powered laser. Maybe, but that would be about all I could guess. So suffice it to say, the way Valentine's Day and a day set aside to celebrate romance and love is implemented is not something I'm particularly enthusiastic about. But I am enthusiastic, I would say, around the idea of actually celebrating love. We could all use more of that, couldn't we? In the world. The world could use a lot more of that, but we need to find better ways to do it. Even kind of old-fashioned things of writing poems and love letters and things like that have all been incredibly de-emphasized or forgotten about, in part to push the consumerist mentality. And I really think a lot of people fail to see how much consumerism has brainwashed, particularly people in capitalist countries like the United States, like to the point where we're not even really appreciating the people. Valentine's Day is kind of the day where I bet a significant portion of fights happen on average, and breakups and things like that, because it creates this expectation. And in a lot of ways, Valentine's Day is kind of like Christmas, where it really shouldn't exist, because there shouldn't be this expectation to treat someone better on one specific day. You should treat your Valentine's Day love the same way every year. They should always feel loved. If they're not feeling loved, then you're probably not doing a good job in that relationship, and they probably shouldn't stay in that relationship. Same is true for Christmas. If you're getting love by getting presents in Christmas, and then not getting presents any other time of the year, or very rarely any other time of the year, then that's really not a good situation. You should be giving gifts and things that people actually practically need throughout the entire year, and that's how I try to live life, at least in purchasing stuff for myself. I said it'd be very weird if you just spun it and said you were only going to buy yourself things you wanted or needed on Christmas. I bet there's a few people that actually do live like that, but yeah, that does just scream strange. Let's see. So I could change this to a 4-star, but that really won't do anything. Well, actually, I changed that to an 8-star, so it still really didn't do anything. Yeah, and I guess that's probably as much as I really have to say about Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day, in my mind, really is almost a baby holiday. Yeah, it kind of is in my mind. It's something you have the 10-year-olds, the kids in getting a little older in elementary school. You have this special day to get them to think about the idea of having romantic relationships, even though a lot of parents probably would cringe at the idea of their children, even in elementary school, having any kind of like puppy love relationships, even though, in my opinion, they probably should have quite a lot of that, for fear of them becoming antisocial or awkward. But yeah, having a special day is kind of like in my mind, just a kid's holiday that really shouldn't be celebrated too much by adults. Same is kind of true for Christmas. Like, if you're 50 years old or older and you're treating Valentine's Day like a big holiday, you're the equivalent in my mind of being one of those 50-year-olds that still goes to Disneyland even though they don't have any kids, or their kids have grown up and left. Although I really don't have a lot of ground to stand on as somebody who's playing with Legos a lot more than he probably should be. Although I guess I don't really play with them. I assemble them kind of like model building and then put them on a shelf. I don't play pretend with them and give personality or actions to any of the minifig characters or anything like that. So moving on for the accountability section, I am still playing Fallout 3, which that's the same thing I'm going to say probably for the next couple of weeks. I do feel there's a decent chance that I am going to just completely drop the ball on scheduling videos because yet another Spotlight is airing and premiering today, and unless I schedule the show, like, I wouldn't be surprised if I just haven't scheduled it. As far as what's happening in Fallout 3, the Broken Steel DLC that takes place mostly in the Capital Wasteland, which is the main area of Fallout 3, is a little bit longer, I think, than some of the other DLC. And I did all of that, and I'm about halfway through the Pit DLC, which honestly, the Pit DLC barely feels like it's 6 hours of content. Although I will say the Pit DLC does some interesting things that it would be nice if the other DLC did too, by stripping me of all of my equipment and making me go back to the beginning. They just took all of my, not only weapons and armor, but all of my health packs and anything else I was just holding. And so that effectively makes you start back at 0 for the DLC, which is fine, except for the fact that I'm already at the max level of 30, so I can completely unarmed attack something and just kill it in one blow. I'm just so overpowered there. It didn't seem like they really scaled that. And there's a point where you're supposed to fight other people, but they didn't create any kind of like boxing system or anything like that. So like you're going into these fights with guns and you're just getting the same headshots that you've been getting for the past 100 hours. And that's just silly in my opinion. Now, The Witcher 3 in comparison makes a great argument where there was a point where there's this boxing ring area, and to fight in the boxing ring area, you are doing a completely different gameplay mechanic. And if you take a step back and kind of look at The Witcher 3's fighting mechanic anyways, there is a lot more focus on fighting one big creature as kind of a side quest and preparing your weapons and putting oils on your weapons and healing up and being really prepared for a big battle, compared to Fallout 3's very generic, oh, here's a super mutant, here's another super mutant, here's another super mutant, and just you go through 100 hours of fighting the same people over and over again. Yeah. So yeah, theoretically, if I can get, I'm managing without just creating bigger cricks in my neck to get 2, maybe 3 recordings a day, 3-hour recordings of Fallout 3. So probably by the end of this week I'll be done with Fallout 3, and definitely need to play a different type of game, definitely need to play a smaller type of game. Getting to Ni no Kuni, for instance, will be probably difficult. So, yeah, I imagine that will be a pretty difficult challenge. to find enough energy to get to Nino Kuni. In a funny way, I might just jump back to Binding of Isaac, since we got more DLC on that, but I really shouldn't. Alright. Can we do anything here? And yeah, that's pretty much all I've been doing. I will say I do feel like the Pit DLC has slightly better writing and frankly a slightly better designed level and map compared to the main wasteland of Fallout, the capital wasteland. But yeah, overall Fallout 3 does just kind of feel like an unfinished game by modern standards, or even by its own standards. The systems are confused and weird. I do think the writing though is better in the Pit, and yeah, I think I may be repeating myself at this point. Let's go ahead and activate this. Go ahead and activate this. Okay. I'm hoping that this will let me kill 2 things. Let's see. Just in there. I suppose the Super Bowl happened. I did not pay any attention to it at all, so I will leave it at that. I guess I have nothing else to say as far as the accountability section. Horizon Forbidden West is getting kind of early reviews, and it seems like people are really liking it. Which, okay, I watched the Giant Bomb early preview of it, and they didn't seem like they were particularly enthusiastic about it, but at a certain point, it's just like another example of how they're given early access to these games, so they're playing them in a completely different state, often more buggier. They've been given this early access to contact and talk with the developers, so often they like to talk about the games in a positive light and hype the games up almost to the point of its launch. It seems like it's slightly before the launch point now, and then at some point the bribe doesn't clear, and they don't get bribed enough, and then they start like pooping on the games like crazy. Honestly, I just think it may not just be Giant Bomb, but that's where I'm seeing it. I think after there being such a shortage at the end of last year of games coming out, that a lot of mainstream video game journalists who had no interest in playing games in the first place have broken themselves of the habit of playing games, and now they are in this melancholic state where they just don't want to play games. And I almost can relate to that at a certain level. There was definitely some years where I just was not feeling particularly like I was in the mood to play video games, and I kind of stopped playing them for 5 years, and then I came back hard and started a YouTube channel. And honestly, had I started a YouTube channel when I started to get a little bored of playing games, instead, my YouTube channel may have actually succeeded a lot more, and B, it probably would have pushed me further to keep playing and playing newer games. I'm still in a very weird position, even now, years later, after starting my YouTube channel, where I'm playing things that I have played a lot of times from the past, things that I played on like Xbox 360. Alright, so Video Games Chronicles says Assassin's Creed Valhalla Dawn of Ragnarok gets a 6-minute deep dive trailer. Check that out if you're interested. I think we may have talked about this article already, but I will once again say this looks very, very colorful for an Assassin's Creed game. Salt and Sacrifice and Hello Neighbor 2 were featured in a PlayStation Indie Games Showcase. This may have been talked about too. We really don't have a lot of news. There is almost an argument too that I should stream at a later time. Although, even though my insomnia is still causing me to sleep a lot per day, like I really am not sure. I'm not sleeping somewhere around 16 hours, 18 hours a day, in small bursts with very poor quality sleep. But ignoring that, my insomnia is at least keeping me awake at a somewhat consistent time, so streaming in the morning should be the thing I should stick with. Yeah. Okay, we play this. Then he's gonna take his sweet time. Oh, I should also mention that it does not tell you that you're about to fall down in ranked if you're about to fall down a rank. Like it says 6 more. It literally said 6 more wins to go up a rank, and then I lost and I went down a rank. Special summon, dropping that. Put that face up. Wait, nope. Oh, clicked the wrong button. Maybe that was the right thing to do. Oh no. That's probably the best I can do now. Let's see. I think we talked about this again. Looks like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's DLC tracks could be coming from Mario Kart Tour. Halo's original composers are suing this. Yeah, this is all old news. I wonder if they just don't update their own page fast enough. That might be the case, or something else may have gone wrong. Horizon has already sold 20 million copies ahead of the Forbidden West. Which that's to say the first game has sold 20 million copies, not the second game. The major Souls exploit that took servers offline is going to be made public before Elden Ring. They're going to disclose details, which at a certain point there is responsible disclosure, and then there is irresponsible disclosure, and there's a lot of debate as to what is responsible disclosure. You'll always get this pushback from people who don't really want to spend the resources and times to fix exploits, to say, well, you should give us a year, you should give us 5 years, you should give us 10 years. They'll just try and push that amount back and back. And that there is amongst, I think, the exploit bug finding community somewhere around like a 90 days amount that I think is probably fair enough. If you can't fix a bug in 90 days, then that's just you being incompetent or lazy. And 90 days is just a number I'm picking off the top of my head, but I think that's probably right. So what I would say is, if you're just looking at the headline here, he didn't disclose the bug immediately, so that is not the height of irresponsible disclosure, because the height of it would be to put out the examples of how this bug exploit is done day one, so anybody can copy and paste that code and do it and use it. So yeah. Says the person behind the discovery of the remote code execution said that they made Bandai Namco aware of it over a month earlier, and that neither the publishers nor the developer from software acted upon the warning until its discoverer demonstrated it in a public Twitch stream last month, as seen in the video below. So yeah, this is Bandai Namco, and I think Japanese companies probably do this more than most companies, refusing to fix the bug and probably just trying to get lawyers to sue the person out of existence instead of fixing the bug. Which, honestly, it's not the best system, frankly, to be a white hat hacker and find bugs and try and submit those bugs to bug bounty boards, when you have companies out there that A, won't pay the bug bounties that they've promised, or B, won't act even if you just give them the information for free and aren't even looking for money, although that doesn't make a career for you, and it really is a full-time job to be a bug researcher or a white hat hacker. It's so much easier and safer as far as just guaranteed income to be a black hat hacker and use the exploit or sell the exploits to bad guys. And it really shouldn't be that way. There is often, sometimes they misalignment, certainly, as far as whether a hacker thinks what they've disclosed is new or is that important. But in almost every scenario in which a company has tried to come back and say, oh, well, this isn't a big bug, this is something we just won't fix or we just don't care about at all. And almost every time that a company has done that is bit them in the butt, because then the hacker can totally demonstrate that it is a big deal and it should have been fixed. So yeah, maybe not 90 days as the number I picked out, but it does seem like Bandai Namco completely ignored them, or worse, I've seen cases of companies literally try to sue people. And a funny, I mean, there is definitely this mentality in big businesses that they would rather have the government imprison potentially everyone on the planet and side with them instead of just fixing their own code. Same thing is kind of true with copyright. Like, copyright is literally just special protection for big businesses that's really not usable for small businesses or small creators, just because of how expensive it is to bring a copyright lawsuit. Whereas it would make just as much sense for the government to say, well, your businesses are going to have to beware, and you're going to just have to have better encryption schemes to make sure your copyrighted stuff can't be copied, because we're not going to pass digital millennium copyright laws over and over and over again to protect Disney and Nintendo and no one else. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says, after the Earthbound Switch release, Mother 3's producer has called for the Japan-only sequel to be localized. Oh, yeah, that's why I was thinking of Mother 3. Is this was the game that never got translated and brought to the West, as far as the Earthbound / Mother series. And the old Nintendo of America CEO has joked a couple times that he has actually played a translated version of Mother 3. It would be very easy to translate it and bring it over, I'd imagine. Unless there was just something... I mean, I couldn't believe there's anything in it that is that incredibly offensive at all. Like... Moving on. Yeah. Platinum Games will release a Babylon's Fall PlayStation demo this month. I'm still not sure really what Babylon's Fall is supposed to be. It does kind of feel like it is just counter-programming to Elden Ring, as far as let's make something that is kind of an MMO / MOBA. Apparently, it looks like Snoop Dogg is coming to Call of Duty Warzone, which I don't know if you would classify that as desperation or good advertising. Yeah. I guess I would have to really think about whether I believe Call of Duty Warzone is played by people who are fans of Snoop Dogg, or whether they just think fans of Snoop Dogg like Call of Duty Warzone. Snoop Dogg is kind of in a weird position, as he's branded himself anyways, as he's the kind of softest of the gangster rappers out there doing Martha Stewart events, and he's kind of more of a chill kind of gangster rapper. I don't think he beefs with people too much. or anything like that. And another step in the direction. I don't even know why I'm calling it a step in the direction. Another example of the new Sony of California's censorship is present here. Let's see. In the turn. The horror game Martha is Dead is going to be censored on PlayStation platforms. Although it's unclear what's going to be removed. However, the Xbox and PC versions will be unaffected. Now, if I look at this trailer and just quickly remind myself which one was Martha's Dead, I might be able to guess what's going to be censored, but... See, you have this lips stitched together, so... and crying, that to me implies there's probably some kind of abuse happening, and this person is not being able to speak out about it. That's usually the imagery we see. Can I really not? Yeah. I don't think I've seen any trailers for this game up until this point. So yeah, I have no idea. But typically when you see a woman in a horror game, they either become in some small part abused, either physically or sexually or mentally, and that could be too much for the delicate sensitivities of Jim Ryan, the guy in charge of PlayStation now. What I suppose this also points out, though, is that this is probably the first time a more Western game developer has had to come out and make this statement, whereas up until this point it is always it has been more Eastern anime style games that were getting the censorship. Let's see. I kind of have to play as many cards as I want to because I don't know what the daily quests are. So this is kind of the problem with daily quests. It does seem like the description of Martha's is Dead is a little bit more. Man, I sure wish I got more of these rewards when I just played. It seems like you just don't get a reward at all unless you win, regardless of somehow finding enough points. Ideally, this is gonna clear off a bunch of daily quests. I'm not doing the best job logging in every day to get the daily logins, and I need to make that more of my standard thing to do. It's not going to be too hard to like log in on my cell phone or something and before I start doing the dailies on Destiny Child on my cell phone. But yeah, just getting that 20 crystals, even though it's a really small amount. See, we've got 3 duels in solo mode we're gonna have to do, and that's kind of ridiculous. We're just gonna have probably no crystals at all when the next expansion comes out. The description here is, Martha is Dead is described as a dark first-person psychological thriller set in 1944 Italy that blurs the lines between reality, superstition, and tragedy of war. So maybe the thing getting censored here very well might just be like swastikas. As conflict intensifies between Germany and the Allied forces, Italy, the desecrated body of a woman is found drowned, Martha. So, the fact that they're coming out and giving some pushback, at least in announcing it, or letting it be known that it's going to be censored, is a step in the right direction. Very slowly, I feel like games companies, particularly games companies that aren't just trying to sell a product and make as much money as possible, are growing a pair and pushing back on censorship. This really, well, the last generation of consoles, frankly, should have been the last generation to have any kind of censorship in the releases, but since that didn't happen, I will say this generation of video game consoles should be the last one to have any real form of censorship imposed upon them. Of course, that is certainly asking a lot to potentially hope that the next generation of consoles would straight up have completely not rated by the ESRB adult only games on their platforms. But it certainly could be done. So, dual victory gets you 1500, quick victory gets you 1000, no damage gets you 1000, activating a spell, performing a special summon, performing a ritual summon. This is probably about as good as you could get. I could activate a trap also, I guess. And we are still getting what are basically just normal cards. Karate Man as a character just really stands out as a old card. Yep, this is an old card too. I don't know if they're specifically targeting and giving me old cards, or if it's just there is a lot of old cards. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says a GoldenEye 007 remaster could be revealed in the next few weeks, it's been claimed. Feel like we'd already talked about this story. Valve has published the 3D printing files to allow people to 3D print their own Steam Deck shells, which I would heavily suspect that there is going to be a better back side of the Steam Deck that comes about and works. Something that would let you potentially have more room for bigger storage devices, more room for potentially bigger batteries, although it's already a little too heavy of a device from what I hear. And but this part is made kind of awkwardly thin when you still have to deal with the grips. So unless you were going to lose the grips completely with the back plate and flatten everything out, which maybe somebody will try that and see how that works. Everything should just be thicker in this middle part. There's almost an argument for making a flap that would fold back and under, and then in that flap having side flaps that would flap over the control sticks, and then you would just have this kind of like back flap cover for the device. I think there is a possibility that maybe they're expecting people to go even crazier and maybe move the touchpads in a different position, because a lot of these things are separate ribbon cabled connectors, so you could print a new 3D front and move the touchpad up, move the twin stick down. I would like to see a mechanism where the twin sticks could slide down and lie flat, so that the whole device would lie flatter, but that's probably not really worth designing because it would just probably break. But clearly they want to see what people can do with it, so they don't have to do with it. This is a version 1 of a Steam Deck, and I think they should be working on version 2 even as we speak, as far as making a smaller device, a lighter device, and a cheaper device, even though it is relatively cheap compared to other mobile PC game handhelds that are out there. Okay. Just gotta play this. Activate this. And then start with that. Then we're gonna activate this. So we can summon this. Using that. And that. There probably would have been really good reason to... I shouldn't have activated that, I don't think. Because that's going to send that to being banished. Well, I lucked out there. I believe at the moment people that have the Steam Deck, just to wrap up here, aren't allowed to like show the computer interfaces or talk about really the OS and the performance of specific games. So it is very possible that the hype, which is frankly overhyped already, will only get worse, not better. Yeah, I've lost. As far as what am I trying to say here? Yeah, it's actually, I think the hype might very well die down and reality might settle in. When I think about like my day-to-day game playing as a YouTuber, and this will be similar for any other content creator, nobody is, as far as a content creator, going to be playing the Steam Deck if they're a gamer first. Only tech enthusiasts like Linus Tech Tips, for example, will make a few videos about the Steam Deck or actually use it on a day-to-day. Mainstream video game journalists shouldn't use the Steam Deck because that is not, at the moment, the average experience most people are going to have as far as playing games. So there is going to be this weird divide between people talking about the Steam Deck and people that actually would play the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck does make some sense for little kids who are used to the Switch, but then Steam itself doesn't really make a lot of sense for that. I would definitely have to pore over the compatibility charts and just make sure all the Disney games and Lego games that you can buy on Steam actually run perfectly on the Steam Deck for that even to begin to start to make sense. And it still really doesn't make sense compared to a Switch, unless you've got kids out there that have played everything the Switch has to offer and grown tired of Switch games, which at that point it still may be smarter to simply have them build a cheap gaming PC and learn the process of building gaming PCs in that whole process instead of giving them some pre-built PC. As a PC gamer myself, I don't really have a lot of enthusiasm around the idea of pushing the next generation of potential PC gamers into buying pre-built gaming PCs, and at a certain level the Steam Deck is still just a pre-built gaming PC, and at that it's actually a fairly expensive compromised pre-built gaming PC. If the Switch didn't exist, then yes, the Steam Deck would probably be a guaranteed winner. But that's a big if, and not really the case. Alright. Let's see if we can do this as well as possible. There's really no reason to summon. I guess you can only play one of these per turn. Alright. Two-turn victory here. We might go into a bit of a win streak today. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Capcom is counting down to a reveal coinciding with the Street Fighter tournament. which I would kind of have to suspect is probably an indication that some new Street Fighter game might be announced. And this is, I guess, what Street Fighter looks like now. There's some weirdness, I think, around the Street Fighter lore last time I looked into it, where every new Street Fighter game is still taking place kind of before the events of Street Fighter 2. Like, that Street Fighter 2 just somehow ended all the tournaments. If that is the case, that's certainly unattainable as a concept. Why can I not summon? How in the world am I going to lose here? Why can I not summon these? Neither players can special summon monsters. Vanity's Fiend. Apparently Video Games Chronicle is now getting into video reviews, which, yeah, I'm still not interested in that. Yep. And at this point I think it would be probably me just having a weird hang up to point out that each of these screenshots of her face still feel a little puffy and rounded. They did make it better, but there's still something weird about the bone structure or the shading that they've done with her. If anything, the visuals that I've seen more recently that have kind of gone weird is just the massive amount of armor that they seem to be wearing, or at least Alloy seems to be wearing. It's just a lot of metal, a lot of moving away from the kind of leathers and fabric that I think the and it does seem like they're just Video Games Chronicles is trying to shift it more into that direction, and that may finally push me to I don't know if I really want to go through the hassle of going through hundreds of other mainstream video game journal sites just to find one that's not as annoying, but definitely is getting somewhat annoying to have video reviews and then review roundtables for games. But I guess what I could also do is just close these tabs and not go any further. The Yakuza creator, Nagoshi, shares early info on his new studio's first game. They feel story is more important than setting, which, yeah, story should be more important than setting, but that does definitely imply that the whatever game they're going to make is going to be somewhat similar in story to Yakuza, set in a very different environment, where the Yakuza series kind of is painted into this corner where it has to be set in Japan within a few hundred years of all the other games. I was thinking about this just earlier today. I really, if I was in charge of a publishing company, I would really like to sit down with lawyers and developers that we were working with as a publisher, and find some way to rewrite the contracts to get away from the number metrics. One of the things that seems like it's fairly obviously still going to be an issue with Horizon Zero West, which in a lot of ways the gameplay does look like an improved version of Assassin's Creed and of the old Assassin's Creeds and Tomb Raider games. But the hundreds of little side quests, the hundreds of collectibles, the things that you can actually put a number on, they often, those numbers feel like they are negotiated into existence because you're dealing with publishers. So I would really like to see some better way to do that. Of course, that may mean that you just are straight up going to have to set it by the number of units sold only, and you really can't make a contract that says you must sell this much, otherwise we won't pay you, because that really doesn't establish any checks for the 4 years of development before then. And that's really where the numbers come in, is that every quarter, I imagine the head game programmer developer will have to report how many collectibles do we have we added in this quarter, how many more do we have to go, how many levels have we created, how many acts, and there's a lot of ways in which people get rushed or just get lazy and cheat those number metrics, and you'll have an act in a game that's barely 20 minutes where other acts may be 4 or 5 hours, or you'll have 20 or 30 collectibles in the same place. That's true with the Fallout 3 DLC, The Pit. They do kind of a great thing where they introduce this area where there really aren't that many enemies. There are some kind of respawning enemies that show up every now and then just to keep it interesting, but what you're really doing is wandering around a maze looking for 100 steel ingots, which, okay, so it's kind of like a wander around this 3D kind of open area, open hallway maze looking for 100 steel ingots. But then they clearly had negotiated with Bethesda. I'm almost certain that it wasn't actually Bethesda that made the Pit DLC. It just feels a little too different. They clearly negotiated that there would be 100 steel ingots, and then they cheat that by having large piles of 5 or 6 ingots at a time. So really there's actually just slightly over 15 places, I would guess, where you get ingots. Sometimes you just get a pile of 2 ingots, but I was able to, without having to look up any map or guide, which I didn't initially or instantaneously find a map. There is a guide that tells you where things are, but trying to describe things with words is kind of a nightmare. Should just be a map. But without using any assistance, I was able to find 90 out of 100, and at that point I was willing to just say that's good enough. So maybe that stops me from getting some extra item, but because there's no achievements in the Game of the Year version of Fallout 3 on Steam, there's nothing I'm really missing. There would have been an achievement for getting all 100 ingots if I was playing it on a different platform. But yeah, if I was a publisher, I would try to get away from those metrics, because it's too much. Horizon Zero, Horizon Forbidden West is another game that feels like it is going to just have a lot of side quests and a lot of elements. We saw the same thing with Dying Light 2. Take notice that nobody has anything to say about Dying Light 2 at all a week after its release. I imagine there are people out there playing it, certainly, but that's it. As far as any news or late reviews. And in a lot of ways, this also shows that mainstream journalism, video game journalism, didn't learn their lesson. With the slowdown and the breaks, it would have made a lot of sense to potentially continuously talk about Dying Light 2, stretch it out for 4 months until there's something else to talk about, and actually play all of the game. But I bet that's not the case. I bet a lot of people put in maybe 20 hours into Dying Light 2, put in their review, and then swore to never actually finish it. Because they just don't care and just don't want to play games in the first place. They'd rather sit around and do nothing than take the free time that they're being afforded because of the slowdown of games. And I hope just the average gamer isn't taking that same attitude. I'm hoping one would hope with extra free time, less going out to restaurants and just having to stay home, that people are really embracing the free time that they probably desperately would have loved to have as an opportunity, even if it's an opportunity forced on you due to unfortunate circumstances. There really is a lot of opportunity here to play more games. I'm not gonna beat anyone in the head if they don't appreciate it, certainly. And I bet there are some people making the same argument that people should be reading more books, and for most people that is out of the question. Moving on, back to video game news. Video Games Chronicles says a hidden modern day room in Pokemon Legends Arceus has been found, complete with a Nintendo Switch console. So Arceus is set in the past, but ironically updates and gets rid of some of the things that have been ubiquitous as far as there's a Switch. And that's a pretty big TV. It's a pretty big room. Definitely not like a Japanese bedroom. I wonder if this is going to be for some kind of multiplayer, or just it was a test room. Or if perhaps they were going to make an argument that Arceus was a video game of Pokemon, or that's happening in the Pokemon world. So someone in the modern Pokemon timeline was playing a game based on the history of the previous Pokemon games. I also wouldn't be surprised if there's like some kind of collectibles they were thinking about adding. The problem certainly is now that Pokemon Legends Arceus has come out and been called the series' best game in years, according to Video Games Chronicles. Does that tell the Pokemon Company to just continuously make Pokemon Legends Arceus games for a couple years and never catch up back to the modern time until people forget that the modern games were worse? Or do they kind of do an A-B thing where one year it's a Pokemon Legends game, one year it's a regular Pokemon game, and maybe they'll hope that people actually still want to play the regular Pokemon games? Or are the Pokemon first generation of games just dead, and all Pokemon games, whether they have Legends on the title or not, will soon have these new systems, which is probably the right way to go about it. And just make everything, take it away from being turn-based, and make everything very fast and very high action. In a lot of ways, as a foreigner, as a Westerner who doesn't play a lot of RPG games, the idea of turn-based RPGs, that was some kind of major pop in there. Like, I don't think any RPG game really should be turn-based at this point. At the very least, I don't think it should be slow. Like, and see, yeah, I could definitely see myself playing this Pokemon game way more than going and trying to play like Brilliant Diamond or Shiny Pearl. And yeah, maybe you're not really doing as much to really level up or pick the actions of the Pokemon in your field, because and you're not really going for gyms or badges or anything. But what would be interesting, and you really couldn't do it because it's too complicated of a story in a Pokemon game, it would be interesting if Ash Ketchum like destroyed the gym badge system completely. Like they brought out some big movie, some Pokemon movie, and said, you know what, us having these gym badge systems and having our entire society built in this way around collecting gym badges is wrong for some reason, and we've got to stop it. We've got to go back to the old ways. But yeah, that would be a very complicated system, certainly. It would make a lot more sense to potentially just have the bad guys, the Team Rocket or whoever are the bad guys now, take over all the gyms and shut them down, and have everybody go back to an old way of doing things. But then I don't know how you integrate modern technology into that in any way that makes sense. See if we can win here or not. Meanwhile, while he's deciding what to do, Ubisoft apparently is hiring for a new Might and Magic AAA game. It's currently being planned at Shanghai, at the Ubisoft Shanghai. So, I mean, I would almost assume it would be Heroes of Might and Magic. While it would be nice and ambitious, certainly to it would be silly, intriguing if they tried to do something else, but I think they probably need to establish one good Might and Magic game first, since it's been so long, probably in the Heroes of Might and Magic series, before they go back to maybe the regular Might and Magic action series, which has been mostly forgotten. Apparently there have been spin-offs like Might and Magic Elemental Guardians here, which definitely looks like it is a mobile phone game. And if you look at like the creatures, by the way, he killed me. Yeah. This does not really look like Might and Magic to me. It's very, very cartoony compared to like Heroes of Might and Magic 3. It might have some of the characters, but they've been completely redrawn. See, Might and Magic 10 Legacy was released in 2014, and it was the first title released in the series in 12 years, and so it's been another 8 years since then. Ubisoft acquired Might and Magic from 3DO, so then there's been some Might and Magic mobile games. There's a decent chance this is just another mobile game. There's really no indication there that it would be a Heroes of Might and Magic game anyways. But yeah, Ubisoft owns Might and Magic as a phrase, basically, so you definitely should do something with it to kind of fight against and counter program against Dungeons and Dragons. Otherwise, Hasbro is probably going to come out with a Dungeons and Dragons game series at some point and scoop up any fandom there. Although I don't know if Hasbro at the moment really cares about Dungeons and Dragons more than just using the same characters to tell stories in Magic the Gathering. And of course, since it is all just kind of that Tolkien-esque fantasy, you could make your own series and call it something else. Just make it rhyme just for copycat's sake, but that's about it. Like you could make a series called Fables and Fantasies just as easily. That being said, I suppose it is also worth mentioning that there is a Lord of the Rings TV production that is at the beginning of pre-production, and they've already pissed off, it seems like, at least a percentage of their fandom by what is being accused as SJW woke casting and bringing in like black actors to play characters that were not depicted as ever being dark-skinned or black. There has been a kind of long-standing accusation against Tolkien that he wrote a universe from his kind of old white man perspective that all the characters would have been white, and even in the movies they made one of the elves a female just to have a love interest, and that didn't go over well either. It seems like they're doing even more of that. And I think there's just a lot of fandom and a lot of arguments that have been had hundreds of times over coming back to the surface. Like one of the meme pictures I saw is, don't draw female dwarves as looking like a human female, draw them as a only slightly feminine dwarf, still with a beard and just having slightly bigger breasts. So it's always been a case, and I guess the point I'm trying to make here is it's always been a case that when you get into these fantasy games and you've established a world, everything gets set in stone very quickly, and you can't make changes and you can't do things different without people getting upset. And so it often, to me, feels like it would be better, instead of them making a new Lord of the Rings prequel TV series, to just say, hey, we're going to make a high fantasy Tolkien-esque series, but we're not going to use Warner Brothers license, and we're not going to call it Lord of the Rings. It's not going to be a place with the rings as a major focus, but it will feel like that. It will be inspired by shows like things like Lord of the Rings and multiple things. At a certain level, it's actually kind of stupid to make a Lord of the Rings prequel and try to bank on that name when you could just tell a new story and say inspired by Tolkien and several other fantasy writers, and you just throw out the top 3 names of fantasy writers and you say your show is inspired by all of them, and then you can make the claim that you've evolved the genre further. Like the Orville compared to like Star Trek Discovery, like, is probably a good comparison there, where the Orville was inspired by Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation. They probably were also in part inspired a little bit by Star Wars, and they definitely had the Family Guy influence because it was the guy making Family Guy. So there's 4 influences there. Arguably the Family Guy one is the mistake in that, but Star Trek Discovery, on the other hand, was barely inspired by Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation. Honestly, probably not really inspired by either one of those, and kind of just going its own direction from scratch. Alright, last chance to win here. Yeah, once you start getting up to gold level, you see a whole lot of these Ash Blossoms, a whole lot of Maxis, and that just ends the one card you needed to play. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle has an article here. Platinum's new CEO says he wouldn't dismiss acquisition offers, quote, as long as our freedom is respected, end quote. He also thinks Activision will be afforded autonomy under Microsoft. I could definitely see Platinum Games being the testbed / Trojan horse for Microsoft to acquire a Japanese company. Like, Platinum Games doesn't have that much to lose. They've already kind of had a rough experience, even though they haven't come out and publicly admitted it with Nintendo. Nintendo has just been sitting on Bayonetta 3. The game, I think, is completely done and has been, I think, for months. I think the Metroid Prime trilogy also has been completely done, and Metroid Prime 4 has possibly been completely done too. And Nintendo is just sitting on it, shelving it until they have a low quarter or a slow quarter. This is almost directly in a counter to the analyst saying that Microsoft would find it very difficult to acquire major Japanese studios, which arguably maybe Platinum is not a major Japanese studio. And at a certain point, Microsoft doesn't need to acquire major Japanese studios. Like, Microsoft shouldn't try to acquire Square Enix or Sony or even Sega. They should try to get Platinum Games and Atlas and NIS and maybe Bandai Namco, maybe Konami even. Get those second tier companies that would be cheaper and frankly easier to acquire. Honestly, if Microsoft somehow acquired Sony Interactive Entertainment, and it would probably just drop the ball, and that there's that danger certainly anyways, that Microsoft may have already bit off more than they can chew with their current acquisitions. You can say you're going to give autonomy to each company, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to realize that you're going to need to make some profit from these businesses, and you're going to have to start tightening the belt. At some point, you're going to have to realize that you have far too much redundant management and far too many cooks in the kitchen making decisions. That's the problem with Microsoft outside of the Microsoft gaming division, is that there's just far too many divisions all fighting amongst each other for its own good. And then the last Video Games Chronicle article we have for today is a Cyberpunk livestream is confirmed. It's expected to reveal a PS5, Xbox Series X, S release date, which I don't know how anybody could possibly care about that. Like Cyberpunk is really a game that there's just no need at all to ever talk about it. Well, I should mention this Lost Ark free-to-play RPG game from being published by Amazon Games, developed by Smilegate, was doing incredibly well and very, very popular. And then all of a sudden it has dropped off the face in ratings down to mixed. And I'm not 100% sure why that is. There was, I think, certainly perhaps a realization that the people that were getting into it were getting these starter packs and actually buying in-app purchases to start with. And so if you want the Vanquisher starter pack, you're paying $65. And maybe at certain points the servers started having trouble, or the content ran out, which that is also a possibility, is that people may have just realized that there wasn't enough content there to maintain it. See, here we have a negative review. Nice game if we can count out the fact that I was able to play it for one day, and now I've been just trying to log in for 4 days without the slightest chance to touch the game. Literally unplayable. I do not enjoy this game. Errors. Cannot connect to server due to heavy traffic. So apparently this does seem like it is just that the game got talked about when their servers were not ready for people to actually play it, and now it is getting crushed under its own popularity, which honestly, that is a terrible statement for Amazon Games, because if there was a single person that should have been able to handle the load of a very popular MMO. It should have been Amazon.com and their servers. It's a great statement, perhaps, for the it's a great advertisement, perhaps, for Microsoft's Azure servers instead of Amazon servers. Look at that, we ranked up. And when you rank up, it seems like that's when you get the gold packs, and only then do you get gold packs. Let's see, 3 more to get to tier 3. Fortunately for me, I don't really have to care about Lost Ark. It's a free-to-play game. At least it seems or pretends like it is. So, I would expect that there's no reason for me to cover it, and I would just push people to check it out if they're interested. I still am trying to find extra time to build furniture. I honestly can only put about an hour into it. All the bending over to build these shelves is just a little too much for my unhealthy self. So I do want to kind of make this a shorter stream, and that is just going to be the case for the next few weeks, I think. So things like Team Jumpers 2 New Reality is a game I would have dismissed anyways, but I'm going to try and just be quicker to say no to something like this. We definitely are not getting a lot of random games. Here you have maybe slightly inconsistent animation style and definitely more of a Western drawing style for this visual novel. It's the English full audio, it claims. I'll put it on the follow list just for that reason and see if people appreciate full audio. I definitely would appreciate that. Here we have a game called Saber Style, which is just another, I assume, Beat Saber game, although maybe this time not so much. With the music, it honestly looks like it is just straight up fighting with a lightsaber, which actually is a different thing, fighting a robot with 2 dual lightsabers. Alright, I'll put that on the follow list. Particularly with the Steam Deck coming out now, that's really just more evidence to believe that they very possibly will never make another VR game, or another Steam, and Valve won't make another Valve headset. Alright, well, let's see if this works. Next we have a game on Steam called Humans Connect, which looks like it's just an asset flip game, kind of trying to tell a story, because you don't end up with like an Anubis character and monsters fighting monsters. The tagging is an action adventure game, but honestly it feels like it's trying to be a fighting game. Yeah. But the polish here is just completely missing. So that's going to be a no too. Let's see if we can pull this off. Actually, I don't think I needed to have used this. I could have just used this. Let's go ahead and draw a card. Unless there's perhaps more of a reason to destroy a card. Next we have a game on Steam here called Nello in Antwerp, which looks very Studio Ghibli-esque, which is always nice to see a kind of animation. I suspect, though, this doesn't support English. Yep. It's Chinese only, which that's definitely not what I was expecting, so I have to applaud that. Even as a free, probably pretty small experience, this really just jumps out as looking way better animated than most Chinese-only games. It's a real shame it doesn't support English. Let's try this again. Bring that back. Let's go ahead and destroy this card on the field and see if that lets me demoralize them. See, next we have a game on Steam here called Nitroverse, which doesn't look like anything of interest. Roguelike hack and slay, it says. Kind of looks like it's just kind of too zoomed out side shooter, top down shooter in a spaceship. Yeah, that's gonna be a no. We have Cartech misspelled, which looks like a low polygon nothing game. So that's gonna be no. We have something just called Fighter, which looks like an asset flip shooter. And I suspect that's Chinese, yeah. That's gonna be no. Last Space Guardian, looks like a shoot 'em up. Doesn't look terrible as a shoot 'em up. It's just not really my kind of game, style of game. I do want to always applaud when I see a shoot 'em up that bothers to actually be widescreen, even if that isn't actually the right angle to use, which arguably it might not be. Hit that, and then hit that, then end the turn. Next we have a game called Pog 7, which, if there are 6 games before this and it still looks like this, that definitely makes me lose any interest in it. And it looks like there are. So that's going to be a no. A little too minimalistic for my taste these days. Cosmic Security. Some of the visuals here kind of look slightly interesting. Not the background here, but the isometric, little chibi, kind of polygonal characters. But then you get to these other ones that are more top down. It doesn't, there's just not enough here. You could see if there was a lot more visual polish on this, you might have something that feels a lot like one of the remasters of the Legend of Zelda games. But as it is, and at a ridiculously high price of $54.99, that is definitely going to be a no. Well, I guess I can't do anything else, so let's see how this goes. It definitely does feel like when somebody's about to lose, they sometimes just do everything because they have daily quests, or just because they're hoping that that might scare off the player, which I wonder if that actually works in actual tournament play. Yu-Gi-Oh! Having like so many cards, just playing a card and breaking someone's pacing and making them read what the card does would potentially confuse people. Next we have a game on Steam here called Zeppelin Escape Room, which looks too red for its own good, so that's gonna be a no. Then we have Cyberborn, which looks like a first-person shooter. I'm not seeing any enemies though. Like, it's a visually polished kind of nicely, but a cyberpunk style game from somebody I have never heard of. 3 different classes, 3 different abilities, single and on land. Yeah, I don't think there's much of a single player experience here. I think they're really hoping on it becoming a LAN co-op success, which is hoping for too much. Yeah, that's gotta be a no for that. Next we have a game called The Bite, which obviously looks uninteresting to me, like a platformer puzzler. $5.35, bunch of languages. I'm still getting the whole crick in my neck thing. I'm wearing this cushion on my neck, but frankly I probably should be in an actual traction neck brace at this point. Here we have something called the Nifile Day, which makes me suspect that this is not just English. Kind of feels like it's mostly a kinetic visual novel though. English and Russian, $5.99. It's positive so far, so I'll give it a follow. We'll think about it some more. Whereas Tyrone and the Cops certainly feels like there might be some stereotypical racism happening here. Although in all fairness, GTA isn't much better, it's just visually polished a lot more. 98 cents. English only, that's gonna be a no. Tagged as memes and dark comedy. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. The cooperative horror first-person shooter Ripout has added PS5 and Xbox Series versions. This is the first I think I've heard of this game. It does seem like it's both flesh and machine merging together, which there might be something to that idea, certainly, compared to like Doom, where it's just all demon and machine. Or some demon, some machine. Yeah, I guess it has been done before, so it should work again. The action-adventure puzzle game Tentacular has been announced for Steam VR and Quest, which I guess you're controlling tentacles to do different things. That's like a giant octopus squid. This, as an idea, might work fairly well, because there was that game where you controlled an octopus badly, and then the challenge / comedy was in the fact that you were playing as an octopus pretending to be a human. You put that in VR where you have rough controls already, and you make fun of the fact that the controls are rough and accommodate for the fact that you don't really expect the player to be able to have that tight, precise controls. That may work fairly well. A Call of Duty Modern Warfare sequel and a new Warzone experience are due out in 2022, led by Infinity Ward, according to Gamatsu. The titles are going to run on a new engine also, which, okay. Are the Call of Duty people part of Activision Blizzard, or are they separate? I guess it doesn't matter quite yet. The acquisition would have to go through before any major decisions as far as moving everybody over to a new engine is concerned. A game called Heart of the Woods for PS5 and PS4 launches February 14th. It's currently available for Switch and PC. Let's see what it looks like on Steam. Yep, looks like it's very possibly a Yuri girl-on-girl visual novel, if I was to guess. Yeah, LGBTQ plus visual novel. I think I vaguely recall this game, but yeah, and vaguely recalling it would be about as much as I could do, because it came out February 15th of 2019, and it did make it based on being overwhelmingly positive and reviewed by a decent number of people into the wish list. It also has full audio English. And so if I am going to go deep into the idea of covering visual novels, I wouldn't be surprised if I just make a blanket requirement that they have to have full audio. Even playing like Fallout 3 and not having voice lines for the character you're controlling really sucks. It's just too much dialogue, and I've skipped over almost all of the reading dialogue in Fallout 3. I've skipped through, I would say, at least 30% of all the spoken dialogue in Fallout 3. It's just, when you know you're going to be 100 hours in, or when you have been 100 hours in, it's real easy to get bored with that kind of content. Babylon's Fall demo for the PS4 and PS5 launches February 25th, according to Gamatsu. Let's see, the Japanese game releases this week for Assassin's Creed, the Ezio collection for Switch, Horizon Forbidden West for PS5, PS4 in multiple different editions. King of Fighters 15 for PS5 and PS4 in multiple editions. Something called the THE table game for Switch. And Token Ranbu Warriors, a Warriors game for Switch. So yeah, when you look at just the breakdown on what is coming out on the Switch versus anything else, there's 2 PS4 or PS5 games, and in the list there's 3 Switch games. Then when you start to look at like digitally only in particular, I think you go probably even further down the road of Switch games. Should have played that first. Yeah. You have one here that we could call neutral because it's everything. Then you have a Switch, another Switch game, another Switch game, and then a neutral game, another neutral game, another Switch game, a Steam game, a Switch game, a Steam and Microsoft Store game, digitally only, then another Switch game, another Switch game, another Switch game, a PC game, a PC and Switch and PS4 game. There's no PS5 exclusives in this list. Then another Switch, PC, and Steam game. And in all fairness, some of these, like King of Fighters 15 for Xbox Series PC, are digital only, whereas the discs versions, as far as physical, are being separated out. So, that almost sets up the potential argument that Microsoft could make to say that actually secretly we get a lot more game sales in Japan than you think, because we sell most of our games digitally in Japan, and maybe we are starting to see the idea that Japanese gamers don't want those big collectible editions, particularly from Microsoft and for the Xbox, because they just don't care, they just don't have the room for it. They may have grown out of that fad. And frankly, if you're getting collectibles in Japan, getting collector's editions of video games is a really stupid collectible to get. There's much better collectibles you can get and display on your shelf instead. Moving on, Yomawari 3 has its latest trailer, if you want to check that out. This is, I think, one we had already pretended to watch in the last stream. Capcom has a website that's counting down, ending February 21st, which, who knows what that could be for. I wouldn't be surprised if it is an announcement of Resident Evil 4. Like, looking at all of this, though, it could be like a Silent Hill announcement, too. This kind of looks like a road. This kind of looks like a tree. Maybe there's something around the spinning clock that is being hinted at, but maybe not. Like, if you really wanted to keep something like this a secret, you would have a completely uninformed artist say, make me a countdown website, and then give them no further feedback as far as what it is for. I don't even know if Capcom owns Silent Hill. I think Konami owns Silent Hill, so it wouldn't be a Silent Hill game, would it? But it could be anything. And no use in speculating. Really, you can just wait. The Gunk is coming to Steam and other PC storefronts this spring, alongside a photo mode and language updates. Which, the Gunk is a game I think I've heard about, but I don't really recognize. Apparently it's been out for a while on Microsoft platforms. Let's see. Ah, yeah, the Gunk is this almost like Minecraft game if it was a little bit darker. I got an email, and I don't know if it's spam or not, saying that Mojang is like changing its logins for Minecraft over to a different system, which honestly a lot of Microsoft's logins are probably pretty old and need to be updated to better, longer passwords, two-factor authentication passwords. But that's seemingly that could be true. I haven't seen any news about them changing it. I should probably just launch Minecraft. It's been probably 2 or 3 years since I've actually launched Minecraft, just to see if it says anything in the launcher or not. Looks like I'm probably gonna lose here. Moving on, Gamatsu says Wanted Dead has a Valentine's Day trailer and screenshots, which has a weird thing under the gun. Don't know what Wanted Dead is. Not sure I've seen anything about it. It's in development for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. So it's just like really premature for them. Like that, they want it to be a big thing and be in people's minds. Certainly. Which is probably a mistake, frankly. Like, I don't think there's a single game that has tried to have multiple years of hype and try to hype up the game bigger and bigger, and then actually come out and satisfy the people who are at that point are inevitably overhyped. Yeah. Even the like single half-second tease of the next Elder Scrolls game is probably too much hype for Elder Scrolls fans. And once an Elder Scrolls game actually does come out, I wouldn't be surprised if people go, oh, it's not as good as Skyrim, or it's not as good as Oblivion. Let's see, a horror visual novel, Elysian Feeling of Release, is coming to Switch this spring in Japan. Which, this is that more moe art style where the characters are particularly short and anthropomorphically inaccurate in their depiction. That tends to make them look younger than I think they often are said to be, and definitely younger than they often act. Let's see, 9-9 for PS4 and Switch launches June 23rd. It's an all-ages supernatural mystery visual novel. Yeah, I don't want to confuse this with 13 Sentinels, because I was hearing people talk about 13 Sentinels and just how crazy that visual novel is. But I would have to assume that 9-9 probably has 9 characters that you have to deal with, and nine branching, merging stories. In a lot of ways, I think visual novels that have these really branching, merging storylines highlight just how there is a different kind of audience as far as visual novel fans, and how they've been trained to be able to digest and comprehend very complicated stories that you could not tell in many other form factors. You could certainly do it in novel form instead of visual novel form, but if you tried to do it as a TV series or as a movie, it would just be too complicated. There's even at least Western TV series and movies. Whereas stereotypically you could accuse a lot of Western video games of being just brain dead simple and a lot of shooting, just shoot anything that moves style games. You can have a little bit of both, certainly. Bayonetta is kind of a great mix of high action sequences that then go into crazy, complicated stories, or just crazy stories. Moving on, Gamatsu says Focus Entertainment has acquired Leaker Studio, the developer of Metal Slug Tactics and Rogue Lords. I imagine we will see a slowdown, but I suspect we will have acquisitions happening throughout the rest of the year, if not longer. I guess maybe after the second quarter, you'll see it slow down, maybe to an absolute crawl, and not see many, if any, acquisitions in the third annual quarter or fourth quarter. This game over the counter, I don't think is anything I'd be interested in doing. It's still just kind of a business management game, even if you are running a pharmacy. There was a free Android game where you run a like garage home brewing business, and I started to play it for like a few seconds, and then a few minutes. I gave it a few minutes, but then I realized like I just don't have time for another mobile game. Destiny Child is taking all of my time as far as mobile games, and plus I just don't have time to play other games outside of playing Fallout 3 and finishing that series and making content for my YouTube channel. But yeah, it wasn't really going anywhere as far as a business management game, because it really can't go anywhere. Okay, so next question is he's chained all these actions. Yeah, the real question was that a good thing or was that a bad thing? Probably a good thing for them. I don't have anything else I can do. Here we have a game on Steam called MVR, which doesn't look like anything of interest. So it's some kind of free VR game. I'm going to say no to that. Here we have one that looks like it's probably a Chinese like RPG game, NES clone style game. So we have to say no to that. Here we have a very ugly looking pinball game that obviously will say no to that. Here we have another Chinese looking kind of mobile game. It looks like it's probably based around the warring states of China. Again, Chinese only, and not very interesting looking. Play. Let's see if this chain of activating this just gets stopped. I think it probably does. So yeah, he's just gonna constantly be able to discard cards. Here we have a game on Steam called Invasion from Space, which is just a Space Invaders clone of no real interest. So no to that. Here we have Anime Girl versus Soldiers. It's been maybe a week or two since we've seen one of these low effort Anime Girls games. And it seems like they're using a different 3D model than the standard asset flipped Anime Girl. And frankly, really looking at this character, I don't know what's actually so anime about her. She's like green and in a bikini, and that's about it. So obviously that's going to be a no. Here we have Pieces of Beauty 3, which looks like a slightly bigger than average jigsaw puzzle. But I don't know if there's any real value in doing a slightly bigger than average jigsaw puzzle. And that straight up got me no points. After 5 more wins, gold tier 3. So if I lose 2 more times, I will fall down. And it's just not telling you that anywhere. It totally does not make that clear. Obviously, I have to say no to Pieces of Beauty 3 just because I'm not going to buy any jigsaw puzzle games. Here we have one called Debug, which actually does look visually polished enough to maybe deserve a follow. But then English is not supported. It's a Korean only game for $3.59, which I'm not too upset about that because it does still kind of look like it is a precision platformer that I would have probably said no to anyways, or it may very well just never have enough reviews to be relevant. Here we have a game called Cyrac, The War in the Middle East, which I'm not sure this supports English, and it probably does, but it doesn't have quite enough polish to it. And frankly, in my mind, I think there's a little bit of a difference between playing a card-based game in the World War II, where the good guys and bad guys have been, through propaganda or rewriting history, fairly firmly divided, and the war in the Middle East, which is more of a clusterfuck, for lack of a better term. So I would have to say no to this. Next we have a game called Ouija Rumors, which may just be a horror game, or it may have something here. It is constantly the problem that horror games now can asset flip so well and look so good that it's hard to tell. So I have to put this on the follow list. $4.49 English. Although no full voice acting, and that would be a game where I would suspect there would be actual full voice acting in it. So that's a little surprising. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam here called Witch Sacrifice, which looks like it's a top-down shooter, maybe even a tower defense game. Yeah. Kind of feels sort of like a tower defense game. And even if it isn't a tower defense game, I think I'd just say I don't think there's enough here to make me want to play that. Let's see. Here we have something called an indie game a month, Unreal Journey, which seems like these are basically tech demos that he's putting on Steam. Is he actually going to charge money for these? I mean, he's kind of committing here to flooding Steam with at least one game a month. This doesn't look terrible, so why not stick to that? Yeah. So yeah, he's selling his tech demos and kind of selling himself as somebody that deserves some kind of like Patreon support via buying these tech demos on Steam because he's making a different game a month, which isn't the way any game developer would ever actually work. If you actually think about it, instead of releasing a game every month, hopefully for just 1 year, but possibly every month until somebody stops them, like instead of doing that, you should just work on one game until it's actually finished, or at least close to being finished. Although I think actually finished is the right way to say that. I don't believe in any of this early access garbage. Early access only makes sense to me if you're particularly making a game that is online and you need to get people online to test your servers. That is the only time when having more people makes more sense. If you're making a single player game, that should just be internal quality assurance testing. Shouldn't be shopped out to people that you want to rip off, potentially. Alright, well, let's see if this works. See, I don't think I have enough time here, even if I got really lucky. I'd have to get some quick disconnects, and in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, you just don't get quick disconnects that often. So I don't think I'm going to make it up to the next level of rank. On top of which, I have these solo daily quests, and I think there's definitely an argument towards getting those solo daily quests done. I may just do those off screen because it's not like they're particularly good experiences to do solo at this point. I could either do something that's going to be really easy, or I could try and finish the last few duels I haven't done in solo mode, which are very difficult. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Dance Hall Brawl, all squished together as one word. The idea of dancing to fight dancing is an interesting idea, but the visuals and the way it's depicted doesn't actually look that good. And it still seems like there is actual fighting of some level. So visually it's just so unpolished, just this big scene of red. I have to say no to it. Here we have Mystery Solitaire Grimm's Tales 4, which obviously I'm going to say no to that. Here we have something called Across the Ocean, which looks like a poorly made survival / naval combat game, it claims to be. English Chinese again. Here we have Flowering Abyss, which may be like a Japanese only visual novel. I'm not seeing any English here. $4.79, Chinese only. Alright, well, not terrible for a Chinese visual novel as far as visuals. And then I would assume that this game Suramont might be Chinese too, although it does seem like there's a lot more gameplay mechanics and a lot more animation here. But once again, it doesn't feel like it supports English. $14.99 Chinese owned. Yeah, we are getting overwhelmed with Chinese only games more than anything else these days. Here we have something called Medieval Nightmare, which visually I just don't think it's polished enough. I could see a game like this really working. I don't know if I really would want to play a game set in medieval time, particularly if it's not going to embrace a Tolkien-esque fantasy and instead just have skeletons and zombies, for lack of a better description. Something like Dragon Age, where they go in their own direction and create their own universe and tell their own story, I think has more appeal than just having something in generic England medieval time. Alright. Let's see if this works. Tribute a monster. Summon this. Go ahead and activate this. I picked the wrong one. I don't think this is gonna work. Just go ahead and activate that. Next we have a game on Steam, Toho Mystery Reel, which for a Toho game does not look particularly interesting. So I'm gonna say no to that. I just, in all of these screenshots, I don't see anything here that looks particularly good. Next we have a visual novel called First Bite, which seems to be a visual novel surrounding vampires, which I suppose that's a fetish. So I could definitely see my real hope here would have been that this can be won't destroy, and then we could attack with this, activate its ability again, attack again, and then attack again. And if that were the case, that would have won. Although we would have just had to attack twice, but that's not it. Yeah, I'll give First Bite a follow. It may not be much of a visual novel, it may not be relevant. Yeah. Trailer's really not showing too much, which is not super surprising. Let's see. Next we have a game called Doki Doki Ragnarok, which I can only assume is some kind of dating sim with ancient Viking characters drawn in kind of a chibi style. I guess if I'd waited a turn, I could have possibly played this card and the other card and then summoned this. So yeah, I'll put Doki Doki Ragnarok on the fall list just because it's so weird of a looking game that I would like to see people's reaction to it. Here we have one called Fae, A Tale of Shadow, which is drawn just awfully. So, and really expensive at $17.99. That's going to be a no. 7 Days to Save the World. There was a TV show called 7 Days. This looks nothing like that TV show and does not look good in general. Let's see. 6 more, so we can play one more game and possibly lose and fall down, or we can check the new daily quests, which it does kind of feel like you have to check these daily quests fairly carefully and get them done, and maybe even play a little bit off screen. Make sure you get them done. It is kind of these weird speed bumps where you just get these new daily quests and you just need to speculate and you need to get the daily login, and then sometimes you need to play ranked, sometimes you need to play solo. They really should rethink some of them and just say do this, or do that. I kind of like it if all daily quests were something like take this number of turns, play this number of turns, because that's something that's universal throughout the entire game. While we're spectating, here's a game called Umber Galaxy, which looks like nothing, so we can say no to that. Here we have a game called I Am Gangster, which looks like nothing, so we can say no to that. Here we have Golden Jetpack Man, which looks like nothing, so we can say no to that. Man, I'm just repeating myself at this point. Here we have something called The Shore VR, which is mostly negative. So I almost have to assume it does not actually play, because I would think seeing Cthulhu-esque old gods all over the place in VR would be exactly what people would want. Let's check out the reviews here and see what the complaints are. Are they gonna load? I love point and click games and Lovecraft setting, and I thought this game was like Call of Cthulhu style in some part, but it's too slow. There's no clue on what to do and where to go. It's like a free roaming game where you do quote things, and sometimes almost without reason huge monsters appear and you have to fight them. The setting is great, but the graphics are too simple, and it's a negative point for a PC VR game. Interaction with items is less than basic. You can only grab key items and you can't interact with anything in the environment. It's like looking a living picture where you can only walk around, take this item from here and bring it to there. So, seems like it's just like all visuals and no actual gameplay. 23% positive is incredibly low for a positivity scale, which is a shame because some of these visuals do look interesting, and it's kind of a shame that we haven't seen some of these visuals in other games. Lust for Darkness might be the only game out there that even has attempted to come close, or there was a couple others, but a lot of times people make these Cthulhu-esque games and then they're not willing to actually commit to showing Cthulhu or any of the characters they show. They imply that you'll see Cthulhu, much like the stories, I suppose, but they don't. They're not willing to cross the barrier of converting what would have been a description in a book into the video that you would need to see and animate in a video game. Here we have a game on Steam called The War of Jorth, which just looks like an NES clone RPG, so that's obviously going to be a no. Here we have a game called Infernax, which seems like it might be something more than just a NES game, but I don't know if I really believe that. It's funny as it says it has partial nudity and it's rated M for mature. Well, I suspect it actually hasn't been rated. It's not actually available for sale, and all that is here is the original soundtrack. So I'm thinking what to do in this case is to probably just ignore it and close this tab. And then if this comes back and it actually is for sale and somebody mentions it, I might consider it. But they've failed miserably here by not having the game actually available for sale when it is listed for sale. In a lot of ways it just kind of looks like a Castlevania game that is trying to be a little bit more edgelord about it, which I'm cool with that as an idea, but it looks too much like an NES game to really make me happy all the time. And that's going to be the problem, is that I could easily see myself playing a game like that and just always having in the back of my head this dissatisfaction with the graphics. Where you have a game like this, AI Stories, where it would not be in the back of my head, it would be right at front and center that I would be dissatisfied with these graphics. So obviously I can dismiss a game like this. That's going to bring us to GameDeveloper.com. We already talked about this article. Experimental gameplay workshops at GDC, we don't really need to talk about. The game Sifu is sold over 500,000 copies in 48 hours, according to GameDeveloper.com. In Sifu, you can play as a male or a female, but all the footage I've seen up until this point, it has been the male character. I think that's the case. I'm still not 100% sure. People in general want to play Sifu because it may just be too difficult of a game, or that people just want to play it because of its gameplay mechanic. Like it could be actually that it's not even that difficult for a lot of players, it's just too much of a kind of slower paced beat 'em up game compared to the West, who's not really used to playing beat 'em up games. And if they are used to playing beat 'em up games, they're probably used to playing faster paced. There's going to be 10 people in the room and you're going to just be able to mash buttons to kill everybody style games. I'm probably doomed here. Dark Magicians. Dark Magician. You don't get to see a lot of Dark Magician decks. GameDeveloper.com says Lost Ark topped 1.32 million concurrent players on Steam over its launch weekend. Of course, that huge amount of players came at the problem of people not being able to log in and being upset at it. Apparently that is the second highest concurrent peak in Steam history, with the first highest being PUBG Battlegrounds. Of course, these numbers are just going to go up and up when you look at like Cyberpunk 2077 and New World and Terraria and Fallout 4. Like, a lot of these games should not have these kind of like all-time peaks. And we should be knocked down. Yep, this is the only notice you get that you're demoted after the fact. No warning, nothing. I guess they don't want to put the pressure on you. But clearly there should be some explanation there or warning, instead of you just having to remember that you have 3 to go up and 3 to go down. So if it says 6 more to win, you're about to fall down again. The UK mobile studio Triple Dot has netted 116 million at a 1.4 billion valuation. So I guess they went public, is the idea. Nope, they did Series B funding, whatever that means. That's a little too inside baseball for my interest. We already talked about Focus Home acquiring Leaker Studios. And we already talked about Steam releasing the CAD files, Computer Assisted Design Files. That's what CAD stands for, I think. Alright, here we have a game that needs more time on the follow list. I have suspected that I was going to end up having to log in almost every day to stream, but thank goodness that doesn't seem to be the case. Also, that whole internet trouble has not reared its ugly head again. Also, I haven't done anything to my Wi-Fi connection, so I haven't had any Wi-Fi issues lately. So knock on wood, nothing has gone wrong lately in those avenues, which honestly it feels like as soon as I don't have some kind of network trouble or some other problem plaguing me externally, my body takes that as a notice to develop a new ache and pain, like this crick in my neck, for instance. But yeah, I guess it's probably more realistic that there's a long list of problems everybody has, and you just start at the most pressing, most obvious ones, and once those problems go away, you work your way down the list. And maybe at some point, some people have no problems at all. Let's go ahead and see if we can bring this to the foreground. He missed my timing there. He's got a lot of spells. Let's see how this goes. Well, while he's thinking, Monster Logic here needs some more time. Although, maybe I could dismiss it because it's not really relevant. I'd love to have another programming game, but 40 levels in a programming game. Yeah, July 6, 2020 is too much. I gotta remove that from the fall list. We're doing fall list cleanup at the moment. Monster Jam Steel Titans 2 as a racing game seems to have all the requirements. So we'll put that on the wish list. Alright. Apparently I cannot flip this at the moment, but maybe next turn. Otherwise this guy may just be stuck in a defensive position. Probably doesn't matter too much though. He's got only one card, so unless this card can do some major strategy for him. Let's see, Monster Battle Quest. Should I give it some more time? I feel like there's another game that came out that isn't too different from this Monster Battle Quest. Unless this is the game I'm thinking of. But yeah, it's not connecting to that. Yeah, this may very well be the game I'm thinking of. So I'll leave that on the fall list. Change to attack position. Activate effects. Tribute the monster from the graveyard back. Let's do this. Activate that effect. Waiting for a response. Attack. And attack. In turn. Next we have Monster Bash here. This is an old Apogee game. I don't think there's I think there's enough relevancy here, at least nostalgia in my mind, to put this in the wish list. Of course, I wouldn't be surprised if this is also like way too expensive. Yeah, $9.99. That's way too expensive for an old Apogee platforming game. But whatever. We should probably just end on a win today. I think that is the best way to probably stop playing Yu-Gi-Oh! As far as daily quests, I need to activate a bunch more spells in ranked. I need to duel one more time in ranked. And then I need to duel 3 times in solo. So off screen I'll almost certainly do the solo stuff and probably the other stuff too. Here we have a game that needs more time. Yeah, I'll give that more time on the fall list. Monolith here. Looks like some kind of VR game, and I don't know why I was giving it so much consideration. Does not look particularly that good as a VR game, and certainly it's not relevant. So that can go away. Also, it's early access still. Since 2020. Monolisk is rated very positively. Kind of looks like a Bastion style game. We're calling it a card game. ARPG, CCG, and Dungeon Builder all in one. Free to play with in-app purchases. Well, I guess what I was thinking here is that maybe I would consider this, but if it's a free-to-play game with in-app purchases, why in the world would I start playing something like this? No, I think I would either go back to Hearthstone first before I would go to this, or just continue to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Or go back to Shadowverse. Like, at any point I could easily, this game needs more time, obviously. Yeah, at any point I could go back to Hearthstone or Shadowverse, and heck, I could even try to go back to Magic Arena, although I don't think so in that case. Monobot, rated very positively here. Is it early access? No. Side-scrolling puzzle platformer. Alright, well, it meets the requirements, so I'll put it on the phone list. On the wish list. Then we have Money Falls Coin Pusher Simulator. I would like to find like one really nicely made version of this. Unfortunately, I have yet to do that. You can see that it's not well received. It'd also have to be a very nice version that doesn't have any kind of in-app purchases or real-world gambling around it. So then let me just double check my Twitter feed, which has now 61 new tweets. But how many of those are really about just Happy Valentine's Day from different people, like YouTube Gaming, Mortal Kombat Mobile. I'm just gonna name people putting out Valentine's cards. PlayStation London Studio, Treyarch Studios for Call of Duty World at War. Minecraft. I assume there was just no video game commercials at all that happened in the Super Bowl. Although honestly, I don't know how many people were even watching this Super Bowl. Interesting. Gearbox is looking for people who are local to Dallas, Texas. They're in Frisco, Texas, which is a suburb of North Dallas. If you want to be part of a super fun, super secret project involving your favorite franchise, fill out this form to be potentially featured in a future Borderlands promo video. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they would let you watch the Borderlands movie and get your reaction. That would be what I would suspect. Otherwise, they would, I think, look for fans that probably could play the role or cosplay Borderlands characters if they were going to be in some other kind of promo type thing. Like, it's certainly fairly risky to try to get actual fans of Borderlands to be in any kind of promo video, because there's a high chance that they are not going to be TV presentable. Maybe that, I don't think that that's what they want to do, is to potentially have somebody that's super obese and covered in Cheeto dust represent their fandom or their games. Koei Tecmo is putting out a Valentine's Day around Blue Reflection. As far as Valentine's Day's advertisement, Dallas has a fairly high African American population, I think, so that will be interesting too, because it's not like there's a lot of African American looking characters in the Borderlands series. Although I bet there's a lot of people that are African American that like Borderlands. I'm still scrolling down my Twitter feed. Borderlands put out some Tiny Tina Valentine's Day announcements. Nicholas put out a Valentine's card with, I don't know specifically who this character is, but this is obviously Isaac from Binding of Isaac and Guppy. This is from one of Nicholas's other games, I think. I'm fairly certain. There really is just nothing to do here. TubeBuddy doing a giveaway for 3 months of TubeBuddy Legend upgrades. 14 winners, which is probably a very small number of people. You have to follow them, like, and retweet, and reply with a creator you love to watch, which is a lot of work. Most of these online contests nowadays kind of suck compared to the old days. There really used to be a decent chance you would win a contest online or offline, but now there's just so many people and so many people entering that your odds are practically zero. I was talking about Dragon Age, and so BioWare here has Valentine's Day Inquisitors. Yep. In a lot of ways, I think Valentine's Day in particular highlights where these businesses just have no business to say anything or put out these announcements. There's really nothing they can do. They can't really give chocolate or gifts to people. They don't care enough to give any kind of in-game stuff. Instead of giving us Tiny Tina's Valentine's Day cards, they should have given us a shift code for golden keys, and that just is not what Borderlands chose to do, or Gearbox chose to do. Most of their games don't even have integrated systems like shift codes, which is a real mistake. It would have made a lot of sense for every game to have something like a shift code. Take that concept, take that idea, and bring it to the next level. I suppose if there was a more universal shift code type concept, some kind of in-game currency that you could use for in-app purchases, kind of like the Steam's Point Shop, the Steam Point Shop that might be nice too. Certainly it felt like my gamer score in some small part should be some kind of currency that would allow me to unlock something on Xbox 360 in some games. Alright, well, we've gone 2 hours and 50 minutes, and that's long enough for me, so that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.